Hey there, Alex Kidman here, and this is the Motorola Moto G86 Power. It's a $499 phone here in Australia, and I'm going to do something just a little bit different to my usual review layout for this one, because I'm going to start this by talking about the battery. And the reason I'm doing that is because, like the rest of Motorola's power phones, we don't get all of them here in Australia, but this is the latest. It's power because it's got a big battery on board. 6,720 milliamp hours to be precise. Very, very large. The average Android phone at the time of making this video has about 5,000 milliamp hour battery. There are a few 6,000 milliamp hour batteries out there, but there's very few that tip the scales over 6,000 milliamp hours, especially in the non-gaming space and especially at this kind of price point. Although, as we'll see, that price point does have some limitations. But to get back to the battery, just having a big battery is not necessarily enough. You've got to be able to actually use it sensibly. And of course, everyone's usage varies. Now, for this, I run a 3-hour YouTube battery test just to give it a comparative picture against other phones in its category to see how well it runs. So let's have a look at how the G86 Power compares against other phones in its rough price bracket. So Motorola's big claim here is that the G86 Power is good for all weekend long power. And could it do that? Yeah, I think it can, under the right circumstances. Of course, there's no phone I've ever hit that I couldn't send flat within a day's usage. Absolutely, that's a thing. But at the same time, on moderate usage, yeah, this did quite well. Outside of that battery test, just some anecdotal usage, a day is pretty easily enough, so you're really hammering it. For a $499 phone, though, it's not a particularly fast charging one, and at least here in Australia, this rather thin box does not hide a charger. So you'll have to provide one yourself for up to 30-watt charging. Skipping back to where I'd usually start, which is in design terms. For the Motorola Moto G86 Power, what we're talking here is a 6.7-inch, 120Hz capable AMOLED display. And that works well enough, especially in direct sunlight. It can peak up to 4,500 nits of brightness, which is quite nice. It's quite a good phone to use outside. Outside of that, though, it's a kind of dull-looking phone. It's just not all that exciting. In Australia, it comes in just two colour variants, Pantone Spellbound and Pantone Cosmic Sky. And we're all familiar with what those colours look like, right? Well, I'll tell you, this is Spellbound. So it's a very dark blue, although in some lights it does come across as more of a kind of black, while Cosmic Sky is more of a light lilac colour. Internationally, it also seems to exist in Pantone Golden Cypress, a kind of pea green more or less, and Pantone Chrysanthemum, which is a rather bold red, but we don't get those choices here. Motorola's long been a fan of having textured backs on its phones, and it's done it here, and those who know what I think about vegan leather will know what I think about this kind of thing as well. Run away! Run away! I don't really like it. Totally a personal quirk thing, but I am rather happy that they do provide, at least for the Australian model, a case, because believe you me, this thing has lived on there. Yes, it's slightly more dull than the actual colour, but it's just a simple, smooth case, which I infinitely prefer in terms of hand feel. Your own tolerances may vary. Controls for the G86 Power are simple enough. You've just got standard volume and then combination, assistant and power. While at the base, you've got USB-C. Unlike some Moto series phones, there's no 3.5mm headphone jack. The left-hand side houses the combination microSD expansion and SIM card tray, so that's a single nano SIM. There is also, at least on the Australian model, again, international models may vary, support for eSIM if that's more your style. Honestly, overall, though, I do find the G86 Power a little bit dull. The one bright point here, I think, is that it's IP69 rated, and that's still not super common in phones under $500. As a reminder, though, IP69 does not mean that you can go scuba diving with this willy-nilly and expect it to survive for years. Water resistance is not a permanent condition, but it's nice that if the worst happens, if it does get splashed or dunked or whatever, it should reasonably survive. On the camera front, Motorola's story for its Moto series phones has often been one of kind of mediocre performance, but at $499, you're starting to stretch up into that space where you might expect to see slightly better camera performance, and, well, spoiler, you basically don't get it. At the rear, what we're talking about here is a 50 megapixel wide and 8 megapixel ultra wide, while at the front, you've got a 32 megapixel sensor for all your selfie taking needs. And look, honestly, this is adequate within that budget space, but I'm going to repeat the point again. At $499, you're starting to see phones with additional lenses or slightly better quality output coming through. Some of the discounted phones that were premium a year or two ago are definitely achievable at that kind of price point. And whilst it's not a terrible phone, it's a deeply, deeply average one at best. Not entirely surprising. I never expect too much out of Motorola's Moto series phones, but here clearly some of the camera quality has been sacrificed in the name of that big, big battery. If you were to crack the Moto G86 open, well, you'd void your warranty irreparably, so maybe don't do that. But if you did, you'd find a MediaTek 7300 processor with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. The Dimensity 7300's a reasonable performer, not entirely unexpected at this price point, but as always, I want to see how it compares against phones in its price bracket, so I ran it through a couple of standard benchmarks. Here's how it compares using Geekbench 6's CPU test. Now, that's not quite best in class, obviously, but that's solid. It suggests it's got performance in line with what you should expect at this price. What about the GPU level? Well, here's how it compares against the same crop of phones using 3D Mark's Wildlife and Wildlife Extreme benchmarks. There is a bigger performance gap there between the Nothing phone and the G86 Power, but again, it's broadly doing as expected within this price range. You also, of course, get access to Moto Actions, so these are things like chopping the phone twice to put the flashlight on or twisting it to the camera. They're all good fun. Motorola's Android launcher is reasonably light. I do rather like that. There is a fly in the ointment here, however, and it's to do with the version of Android that Motorola supplies with the G86 Power and its update plans. So the G86 Power is running on Android 15, and we're already kind of living in an Android 16 land, so it's a little bit behind the pace there, but it gets a bit worse. So Motorola's promise for the G86 Power is for only one Android OS upgrade and 3 years of security updates, which means it's only ever going to get to Android 16, at least officially. And look, sorry Motorola, that's just not good enough at this price point. I don't like it, but I kind of get why in the kind of $200 to $400 space, you see maybe one OS upgrade, maybe two, but one at nearly $500? No, that does not sit well with me. It does not speak to the future of this phone. I mean, even the Motorola Moto G56, the up-spec version, comes with 2 OS upgrades, and if you can do it for that phone, why can't you do it for this one, Motorola? Do better. So should you buy the Motorola Moto G86 Power? Well, look, the battery is the thing here. This is the power phone for a reason. And if you want a long life battery, yes, this has that. This is the core mission of this phone. It wanted to have a big battery. It got one. It works well. The downside here is that nearly everything else is sacrificed in pursuit of that big battery. The app performance is okay within its class, but nothing special. The camera is on the ordinary side, and the design is, outside of that water resistance, kind of plain. Where does that leave the Motorola Moto G86 Power? Well, look, if you're just after battery life, if you want a really basic phone, if your needs are really basic, but you want a phone that will last a really long time, then yes, this will do that job, and it will do it quite well. On that score, it's recommended. However, I would suggest for everyday users who maybe want a little bit more application power, maybe want a nicer looking design, maybe want better cameras, there are better options out. You're making a big sacrifice towards that battery power. Now, that's fine if that's what you want, as I say. If it's not, maybe wait till this one drops in price a little bit, or look elsewhere.